Yeah, we're on.
How are you doing, man? We haven't caught up in a while.
It's been a minute. Yeah. We were just talking about something. What were we going to say for the podcast?
Yeah. So you were saying like you've only been posting clips and case studies.
Yeah. On LinkedIn.
Onto your LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And on the subway on the way here, of course, I was checking LinkedIn and our, I think we both know this person, Jimmy Daly, like Superpath now at Reforge. He was like, there's this idea of content theater in that like nobody's really reading like B2B blogs anymore and that people are reading like Substacks more so than that. And so, but if you just have the idea of content, like case studies, social proof, webinars, podcasts, that we can talk more about that, but it's just kind of this like idea of content may just be like good enough.
What do you mean? Like this is like you're saying like there's sort of people are doing content for the sake of doing content without like much substance behind it. That's content theater, or I'm not totally sure I understand.
Yeah. So blogs have obviously, nobody goes to B2B blogs for like,
are we sure?
Thought leadership, I would say. Well, I mean, we're writing a lot of thought leadership, but like
we don't, because we've been in the space for a long time. And I think most of us like kind of read, we see behind the curtain and we know what's happening. But I feel like depending on the niche, some people probably still read an Ultimate Guide or two.
Yeah, maybe reframed, like we kind of made it into a search channel for a lot of ways. At least people like me and yourself in this industry.
Like it was produced with the intention of it ranking on Google, not necessarily to be found, discovered, shared, and like consumed as its own artifact.
Whereas like Substack, at least at the current moment, is meant for that. And like LinkedIn post for the current moment is like meant for that. But so there's this idea that maybe your blog or your resources on your site, I could be misquoting Jimmy here because I read it super quickly, but it's just like this idea of content and that you have like a lot of stuff on it, but it's not necessarily like putting forth the latest and greatest new ideas, because that might be saved for like LinkedIn or your like Substack or something like that.
I guess it's
maybe we should just pull it up.
No, I like that. Yeah. That's like it's like going to a party to be seen at the party, not to enjoy the party. It's like, all right, I'm doing this for like an artificial external reason. Like I'm writing the content so it appears as if I produce content. Thus, it's like the act of doing so is more important than anything within the content itself.
Yes.
This is a heady idea.
The act of doing the content is more important than the act itself. Yeah. I mean, it's almost like a reality show of content. Yeah. I've been thinking about this idea a lot that you'll kind of enjoy, but I realized I'm a big sports guy, and I realized that a lot of my favorite sports writers don't actually write anymore. So one guy who I like a lot, his name is Bill Simmons. I almost listened to like all of his stuff, but he wrote like on ESPN like a long time ago. And now he only does like a podcast like 3 days a week. And he just has a joke about like how I never write anymore. And then, or my fingers don't work anymore is kind of what he says. But then he hired another writer from ESPN, this guy, Zach Lowe, who's really big into like NBA. He does it. He used to write a bunch of articles on like 10 years ago and at ESPN. And now he only does podcasts. And then you even think about folks like Ezra Klein, who, not being political, but just a big political commentator at the New York Times. Like he got his start through like blogging and doing all this stuff. And now I think he basically, I don't read him like all the time, but I think he just turns his podcast conversations like into transcripts that they then post on the site. It's just like this. And then I'm bringing that up because I'm feeling that tension sometimes with myself because unexpectedly at AirOps, I was kind of thrown into like a webinar situation to where I'm like interviewing a bunch of people around like SEO and search, which I like and I do, but it's just kind of like, oh yeah, I'm not writing the articles and like the thought leadership stuff sometimes as often as I want to.
This is so funny. I don't like to give the punchline. Like I don't like to talk about like how I'm doing something, but when I prepare these podcasts, I come up with a thesis and a motif. So it's like, all right, like you're going to say whatever you say during the podcast, and we're going to go down different rabbit holes. So I'm not rigid to the point where I constrain the conversation to a list of questions just so I fit it to my mold. But I always think, all right, where's this likely going to go and what story do I want to tell? And I do that with executive presentations, blog posts, essays. I always start with a thesis. And my thesis for you was actually
the reveal moment here.
So it's like the surface level story is like from content marketing to content engineering, which is what you always get asked about. But underlying that is basically the idea of transformation, loss of identity, and adaptation. So that was that was how I was going to weave all of this together. But you just went and started with it.
Oh man,
so I think that's
jumped out of the small talk.
Well, okay, so I told you before we started recording that I didn't research you because I know you. Mm-hmm. I would usually look up all the past podcasts you've done, if you've written a book, your LinkedIn, and at least what you went to college for. But I did listen to a podcast, and you have a master's in English.
I do.
You're a writer.
It's true. Yeah, I've self-published a couple books. Yeah.
So that's got to be, I mean, you'd mentioned webinars, which is like, I guess just another form of dialectic. It's like another form of like putting thoughts into motion, and you're hosting most of the time, right? So you're like kind of a host as opposed to like the presenter. So it's a little bit different, but I think the shift from content marketing or writing to content engineering probably represents more of a identity shift for you, if anything.
Yeah. I mean, the content engineering, it's so funny we're doing this now because I wrote about content engineering, the rise of the 10X content engineer, almost exactly a year ago, last February 2025. So I've been like revisiting that idea a lot and I'm going to do a post about it. But the idea there was like, hey, I feel like there's this transition happening between the traditional content strategist, the traditional SEO kind of practitioner, to where we needed this new level of skill where it combined like building workflows and almost like this systems mindset beyond kind of this like one-off type thing, or pursuing like a certain keyword, hiring a writer to do it, hiring a team of freelance writers to do it, to where you really needed this more like systematic approach. So I know a lot of folks were doing that around like programmatic SEO plays and things like that, and like templates. But it became like a lot more accessible, I would say, for the traditional SaaS informational type blog post and that content production. So putting all that together, like it's not necessarily a loss of identity. Maybe it is a little bit from the writing end, but to me, I'm having a lot of fun like editing drafts from AI content. And I'm meaning that because it's like well-grounded in what our brand is, even what our perspectives are from like conversations like this, from product information, all of that. So I'm having fun putting the pieces together like in a different way than just staring at like a blank piece of paper, like I did like 5, 7, 8 years ago.
How do I want to phrase this? I think the concept of identity is important, but like with writing, so you'd mentioned these sports writers who don't seem to write anymore.
Yeah.
For myself, I'm going to conceptualize this through like how I've identified. I think I came from a very generic marketing background. Like it was more of like a growth background.
Right.
So I've never really been like a lot of people are SEOs, and I'm like, we do SEO, but I'm not an SEO, right? Mm-hmm. And for a while I was in conversion rate optimization, and I identified with that for a long time, mainly because of the community. But ultimately, I've always thought, all right, I write, I solve problems, and I analyze data. Like those are kind of like how I identified. And on the writing front, I've leaned very heavily into AI as much as I can. And we'll obviously talk about use cases, workflows, like practical applications. But through all this time, I've maintained a writing practice. And I feel like that's because it does things for me that's not just the product that it's creating. It's like the thinking and the organizing of ideas, and even sometimes like this manual research process where you're like, flipping through pages and you're like, all right, I got to talk to this person, and maybe they'll intro me to somebody else. And there's some process by which all that comes together where I kind of understand a topic better myself. So given you've got this English background and writing background, do you keep a practice related to the composition?
Yeah, it's so funny you asked that. I do kind of have some personal projects I do. Like I actually do have a Substack that I write, not a big audience at all. But I wrote novels like kind of out of my own head, like outlining it, whatever, story creation like that. But I've been blocked, I would say, for like the last one I published was like 2018-ish. So, and I've started some other drafts, but could never get over the hump. So what I did recently is I uploaded all of those books and writings, like my literary writing, into a ChatGPT project. Then I asked for it to help me create a sequel. Then I started creating an outline from that. And then I have always written my novels by hand. So I had an idea and I used to use legal pads, and I just started like writing by hand because that really like freed up my head to just like go without like the distraction of the computer. But with ChatGPT, it like outputted this outline, and then I asked it to like, hey, help me draft a chapter based on my previous writing that has like no AI generation in it at all. It came up with a chapter. And so now what I'm doing is I am copying from ChatGPT by hand into a notebook. And then I'm like reading it, reviewing it, editing it. And then like, so I'm making my own additions like by hand into my notebook. And then after I do that, so I think I've just started this year, one of my goals. So I've done that like for 2 or 3 chapters. I want to do the whole novel that way and then turn right back around and type it into like Google Docs or whatever. Maybe I'll read it just to like have the easier transcript. So whatever, I'm going to put it back into Google Drive. And then I'll make more edits in that process by like writing it. So what it's going to come out is it's going to give me a great corpus to start with. But I really do feel like, because I've grounded it so well, I've given it so many examples of like what I came up with. And now I'm adding my own like context and words on top of it, that it's not like AI writing. Like nobody's going to accuse it of being like, this is AI generated. There's like no way that's going to happen. And what's going to happen too is eventually I won't really know the difference either between what it came up with and what I came up with.
That feels like a technological variant of like bouncing ideas around a group of friends, or reading several books and getting inspired by the sort of like tone, or a musician kind of listening to a different genre to kind of embody a different spirit. And then there's some signal or soul or ineffable quality that only you can embody. I don't know if you believe that that's going to be true. Like if like, so I read this crazy book, Gödel Escher Bach by Douglas Hofstadter. It's like, I would not recommend it to most people. It's not fun.
Yeah.
But it was written in, I think, like the late 70s, and it's all about consciousness and intelligence and how the hardware of the brain becomes the software of the mind. And he kind of relates those ideas to artificial intelligence decades before LLMs were a thing.
Right.
And he kind of makes predictions, some of which were not true, around chess and whatnot. But then he talks about music, and if AI can ever produce beautiful music, and he thinks no, because even if it can compose something that has the semblance or the facsimile of like, good music theory, it can't feel the emotions that Chopin felt, or
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so by you writing by hand, I have to believe that you believe that there's something in that that's actually value additive or currently not replaceable by AI or AI systems.
Yeah, I would say because I'm going to have additional insights that it won't have just from my own experience. And then I'm going to change some stuff because it's just not going to feel real to me. So I almost think of it more as like a collage or like a mixture, to where I'm like starting with like raw materials. And of course, collage has always been debated on like if that's really art or not, or like mixed media or like mashups. There's a really good writer named David Shields. He wrote a book called Reality Hunger, where he just like took excerpts of different books and like kind of put them together. There's a long like literary tradition of that. So I feel like it's kind of in that mode. And going back to like my master's in English, like I studied experimental literature, like in particular in experimental fiction. So this type of stuff is like, this is motivating to me, like, because I don't have to start with like blank page, and there's like so many raw materials to begin with. Maybe in some ways it's almost like that transition from painting to photography, to where photography was just like, this isn't real art. Like you're using machines to create it. Like you really need to put your hand to the paper. Like, what is this? But then we as a society, and then we as artists, or people as artists, learned how to use it in a new way or to put like their own perspective with a camera, and not every photograph looks the same. And so I kind of take that with AI is you in AI content generation is if you have those human review steps, if you have those editorial review steps, bring it back to like B2B a little bit, you're going to have a unique perspective. And just because you didn't write every single jot and tittle, every single preposition doesn't mean that it's like not your point of view.
You know very well that I could talk about what is art with you for the next hour, but if anybody listens to this, they're going to be angry if I don't talk about content engineering.
Okay.
And I think we can relate the ideas back. So let's start out with the high level framing that everybody's asked you already. I'm not going to say what is content engineering, but if I could straw man it, if I could make it the probably not definition, is it basically just, writing blog posts with Zapier? Like it's just like you use an automation tool to write more blog posts, right?
That's very reductive.
Okay. So what is it instead?
It's about building a system for your content on top of like your content library.
Okay.
So the example I always use is like, we've always been in this situation, for better or for worse, to where it's changed from 2025 to 2026. I've got to like update all of these blog posts, right? If I'm doing like a listicle thing. So like previously I had to go into like each post and like change all of the dates. Now with a system in place, you could like make that update all across your library. The other thing is you could start to run really specific experiments. Well, what if I don't change 2025? Or what if I just take out the date versus not taking out the date? Then you could do that at scale. The other thing that I think is really helpful for is what we call content refresh, to where there's some new data that comes out. There's a new study. You're in, I always go back to project management software because that's what I used to be in for a long time. So you say you get a new productivity study. You need to update a lot of your posts that referenced some of these stats. With a lot of these systems, you can go in and like add all of those things into there and update the content, refresh the content. So those are a couple examples. Another one I really like is the internal linking. So I used to have a cluster that I would try to optimize. I would map out all the different ways that the internal links would connect, and then eventually get it down to like my money page or my landing page, my conversion page. Now you can add some power agents, some AI workflows, and be able to have internal linking suggestions from your library right on top of that. So that's what I mean by like a systems approach. And then even a step back is you can upload into what we call brand kits at AirOps, but it's like your product docs, your style guides, your past ratings, your podcast transcripts, your meeting transcripts, your sales calls, to then not only find like questions and like new ideas for content, but then use that to really ground it in like your point of view, your brand's point of view, your brand's updates and like changes. So that's where like that system approach really takes hold.
And I would imagine that, well, actually, let me rephrase this into a question. What is the role of the person in this system? So because it's content engineering, I'm assuming this is a transition, mainly speaking towards content marketers, which may include SEOs or sort of adjacent functions.
Right.
Depends on the company, like who owns what. But all of these are sort of like, all right, we're going to produce assets to draw inbound interest in a product or service, right?
Yeah.
So the content marketer who previously, let's say, architected a strategy to tell a story related to a brand and its products and to distribute that and reach the right people, right?
Yeah.
So now in the content engineering lens, how does that value or that role shift? Like, what is the job of the person behind the system?
Yeah. So we've thought about it in like 3 or 4 different buckets as far as the modern content engineering organization. So step one would be like you need somebody as like a context librarian in some ways, which is managing all of these like product docs, company docs. It's almost like your source of truth. So you need somebody to almost like manage that part. Then on top of that, you have your content engineer who's like pulling that information, building workflows and systems to be able to use that. Then the next level, I would say, is the content strategist who's then like saying like, hey, we're going to pursue this topic over this one, this idea over that one. We're going to build a glossary. We're going to do templates. We're going to run these different plays. We're going to refresh. We're going to optimize. the content engineer puts that into practice using all of the docs and product information and style guides at the bottom. And then even a layer above that, you have the CMO, VP, whatever, who's going to help call the business shots that then gets like passed down the line. So I really do think it's like those 4 type roles. And so that are jobs to be done. I mean, one person at a lot of companies could be doing several of those. But as you think about Fortune 500 or whatever, you might even have multiple layers to that system. But I really do think, and it's a different mindset between a strategist and an engineer. It doesn't mean the strategist doesn't have some of that, but you really have to, as a content engineer, you have to get in the weeds. You have to do some QAing. You don't have to necessarily be like super technical or overly technical. There's lots of, like we have an assistant, Copilot to help you build. You can get instructions from Claude or ChatGPT on like how to build some of this stuff. So it's not necessarily you have to be like a computer science major or a software engineer to be able to pull it off. You just have to like think about it in a slightly different way. And so that's why I think there is like a clear delineation that's starting to emerge between a content strategist and a content engineer.
So you do look at them as sort of separate functionalities. It could be the same person doing both, depending on the company size. But those are 2 distinct sort of skill sets for you. That typically in a larger organization would be 2 different people or two different teams, right?
I think so. Just like you had the content strategist and maybe like a technical SEO person. You're still going to need some of that, but that was always like a pretty clear line from the orgs that I've worked in, is you had somebody who was like, there was a Venn diagram of overlap, but there'd be somebody who'd be like maybe a little bit more editorial and somebody else who'd be a little bit more technical, who would then maybe be like, oh, I'm setting up all of these templates or programmatic pages. Can you take another look? And then like vice versa to help on that. So yeah, it's a different role in between those 2.
I'm going to be reductive again. Is this simply the natural sort of evolution or extension with new tech? Basically, is this just the extension of what operations folks were talking about forever, like content ops folks, and like before it might have been, all right, how do we like, streamline the creation of briefs and like hire more writers and like, we're looking at unit economics of like per page. All right, it costs this much. How can we like increase that? Basically like the Toyota model, right. Is this just a tech-enabled extension of a similar mindset?
I think that's fair. Because what we're seeing is you're having so many touch points. Because the other element we haven't touched on here is that the surfaces have increased, like the search surfaces have increased. So it's not just like Google and Bing. It's like ChatGPT, it's Perplexity, it's Google AI Overviews, it's Google AI Mode.
YouTube, Reddit.
Yeah, YouTube, of course. Like it's all like diffused now to where you almost have to have more articles or more posts or really more content to like hit all of those surfaces. Mm-hmm. Then on top of that, you have to maintain that. So the content engineer is like an essential role in building workflows to help maintain, refresh, and then create for all of those. Because like the one editor with 5 freelancers, like you're going to get left behind if that's like still the same model, at least for growing brands, because the long tail is just like so much longer because of all the different surfaces. And I mean, we can get into a debate between like, is SEO different than AI search? But like, I think there are some fundamental differences, but I think they're only going to increase or be different. And even Google itself is changing. And it also depends on what industry you're in. So yeah, there's all these channels now as far as search surfaces that we have to be concerned about and start thinking about.
This is a complicated question with no right answer, but if you think about like marketplaces and supply and demand, what I'm reading between the lines here is that you believe that there's an increase in sort of open inventory, right? There's like possibly a need for more supply of content, and that is due to proliferation of the long tail, right? Like I would imagine like people in AI systems are writing more complex and more personalized queries that could lead to somebody wanting very specific information, whereas in the past you were in SEO incentivized because you only had 10 blue links on a page to sort of write a comprehensive guide that would compete among that finite set. Where now you can imagine that splintering off into like 10 different intents, and each of those intents would warrant a different page. So thus there's maybe more inventory. Is that a fair assumption as to like the model here, that we now have a need for more content.
Yes. And that the content is now can be even more personalized than we thought. And all of the queries, I think the latest research I saw was at least like 60 words compared to like a 5-word average length for Google keyword searches. So the average query on ChatGPT is like 60 words versus 5. And the reason for that is people are adding more context about their brand, about their particular situation, which means there's an opportunity for your content to be even more specific and tailored. Because as well, your content a lot of times is like feeding the answer, but they might not necessarily go directly to your page. So it gets back into like, you almost need a flurry of activity around your brand and your brand mentions to make sure that you get into a lot of those longer queries, even if they're not like visiting your page directly, but that level, that amount of pages and content and information is helping your brand get surfaced.
Excellent. I think most early stage to growth stage startups probably do have a dearth of content and could benefit from producing more. And I don't want to frame the conversation fully around just content production, because I think that's fairly surface level of what AirOps can do and what you talk about when you think about content engineering. But I have to ask the question, which is like, all right, let's assume you onboard everybody in SaaS or like in a specific industry, or every content marketer starts using AirOps and now they can publish 10x to 100x the content, right? There's still a finite surface area of or a finite supply of attention, right? Like if you could think about like the LinkedIn feed, and you're looking through your LinkedIn feed for 10 minutes per day, an hour a day, whatever that is, you're only going to hit a certain number of posts. So if everybody on there is publishing 10x more, there's still the same sort of attention inventory, if that makes sense. So what I'm asking is like, if everybody's on equal footing with their engineering capabilities, where's the alpha? Like, where's the advantage once? And I think that's probably a long way away, right? We're still in the early phases of this, but like, if you play out that game theory, like where's the value created for an individual brand?
Yeah, I think that I think we are a long way away. I do think that for some aspects, Google search has been inadequate, and we've just kind of like accepted it. Because again, we weren't able to add like more context about our brand, our situation into Google. We were just like, here's the 5 words, best running shoes. Like, let me then go through the list. Let me click on a page, then click out of it, click out, click in, click out. Now it's like best running shoes for Nashville, Tennessee in the wintertime. Like I can get like super specific. So then if I have a content page that then hits that specific query, then they're going to like spend more time on my page, maybe look at my brand in a different light. So what we're seeing, and I'm bringing all that to say, is like organic traffic is down across the board on average, but the conversion rates from some of these longer queries is like higher rate. So the alpha, I think, will be partly in the long tail. But then on the other side of it, we are seeing that digital PR matters more. Your third-party mentions matters more across Reddit, YouTube, LinkedIn. And so having your brand presence just then gives the user, gives the consumer, gives the buyer like more trust in your brand because they've seen you in like multiple places.
Yeah, and I guess like if somebody can produce at a very high scale, like the implication would still be like if you and I are going head to head and we have the same resources and we're selling the same products, there has to be like some sort of like advantage that one of us has, and that's the content's got to be good or better, and like what does that mean? You know what I'm like where I'm coming from? It's like, is that in the brand kits and like the grounding that you're using to create the content? Is that like some flavor of like original data that like you don't have that I have, or like is it just my ability to, I don't know, like distribute it like more effectively? Like how do we, like if we're going head to head on the best running shoes in Nashville in the winter?
Right.
Granted, I'm sure like there's differences inherent in companies enough to warrant content creation at that scale. But if it's truly head to head, like where's the human come in to give it a little nudge ahead?
Yeah, we call this like information gain content or like frontier knowledge content. Frontier knowledge, I think, is what we call it. But it's like those original insights, that like spiky point of view, I think does make a difference as far as like your brand perception goes. So maybe I'm Googling best running shoes for Nashville in the wintertime, and I see Nike versus Adidas, but then I just saw an Adidas billboard or Adidas report, then I might like choose Adidas over Nike, like in that case. So it's almost two different tracks in one ways. And I don't think that's new for content marketing or SEO, to where you kind of had your like SEO content plays, then you might have your thought leadership plays, then you have like something in between. I think at AirOps, what we've done a pretty good job at is having a lot of these like not only thought leadership opinion pieces from our CEO and others and like on webinars, but also a lot of data research along with like some traditional SEO plays to help give us that edge, give us that advantage. And then of course, now we're investing as we grow in even more like brand plays and brand awareness too.
That makes sense.
It's a mix. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, sometimes I think like if a trend does become too popular, you get this like, I'm probably just a contrarian by nature, pros and cons of that. I think it's annoying at times, but in like everybody is writing listicles now, which is like not a new tactic.
No.
Like you and I, we've done that for years before ChatGPT came out, but it's like now with the citation data saying like, oh, like most of this is product listicles. Now it's like everybody's doing it. So now I'm like, all right, well, I want to do something else. Like, or it's like everybody's cold emailing you for sales. It's like, well, what's the opposite of that? It's like, oh, I should have a dinner with like 6 people, Yeah. So sometimes I feel like there's like this pendulum shift where it's like, if everybody's flocking towards something, like obviously there's some signal there and there's a reason they're doing it.
Right.
But also it makes me want to kind of do the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, something works until it doesn't, right? But knowing that point is really hard. I mean, it's funny you brought that up. Like, I was literally reading this thing by Lily Ray earlier today where she was like looking at some Google updates. And as of like this month, February 2026, she saw a decline around listicles and the Google SERPs in particular, and like kind of those self-promotional listicles. The funny thing is like, LLMs still really like them on our research and from what we're finding. So that is like an interesting transition.
Yeah.
Which really then goes back to like the authenticity of the reviews, the authenticity of the listicle. But as far as the format goes, I mean, yeah, I think we're all trying to play around with like what is the next listicle. I mean, BuzzFeed kind of like really made that huge. Yeah. So it's like, what is that other format to make that will really take off or to make an impact on folks?
Yeah, it's interesting. We got cited in that piece by Lily Ray. We were an example.
Oh,
the funny thing is,
I missed that.
I wrote the list. It was like best B2B content or SEO agencies or something. And in the listicle, like we obviously are the first mentioned.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hi, I'm Alex. I'm the founder of this company. I'm biased. You're going to read it anyway, but just so you know, this is my company. So it was very much like a caveat. And I felt that was like a very like ethical, whatever way to do it.
Right.
But anyway, this still worked for us. So
I didn't mean to call you out on that.
No, it's all good. I thought that was hilarious. I was like, all right, we are doing that. But we did it like before it was an LLM tactic. That's the thing. Is like I had a presentation in 2019 and we were doing this at HubSpot, far before then on the surround sound stuff. Where I talked about it. All right, listicles, they're formatted, they're easy to train people to write, they are scalable, readers like to read them, and they really map to bottom of the funnel queries. And the next step of that is to like get mentioned on other people's, which is the whole surround sound SEO play. So you can sort of see this playing out in layers of like how difficult it is to do something. There's like a lower barrier to entry to simply writing a listicle, and then you write a better quality one, maybe with a little bit more editorial taste and judgment. You're trying all the shoes on the list. You have some research that backs up like, the efficacy of a software tool or something like that. And then, like once that's saturated, it's like there's like enough competition. Then you're like, okay, the next play is getting listed on other people's, which is slightly harder. But then when that's saturated, then there's like, all right, what's that next kind of level of advantage? And we're all playing this weird sort of cat and mouse, like Red Queen effect. It's like we're all running just to like catch up.
Yeah.
It's like time decays any advantage,
Yeah. I mean, I think there will be other signals there too. I mean, I'm putting together a lot of these similar lists for our own brand and our own search efforts. But, I think these lists like introduce you to a tool and maybe helps you make a few decisions, but that's not going to be the only signal for most folks. They're going to visit your website. They're going to look at case studies as well. So I think it is really good at the middle and bottom funnel. I mean, I did a study or my own course about this like several years ago before AI even came into the picture around like middle funnel and bottom funnel techniques like list, alternatives, category list, all these like middle and bottom funnel consideration and decision stage stuff. They work well for certain products, but like if you're making a huge buying decision, like they're just going to like open up the possibilities, I would say, and like give some options. But yeah, I mean, there are going to be other trust signals to help somebody make a decision on that, not just like buy it because a list told you to buy it necessarily. Like you check it out and then maybe you will,
I've done that
maybe
a few
you won't.
times just for very low level products.
Right, exactly.
I've noticed my own user behavior. I'm like, oh, whatever, it's a welcome mat. Like I'll just buy it. What was I going to say there? I totally blanked on that. So this idea of like, all right, it's like a self-promotional listicle. Like I was thinking about that. I had a conversation with a client today who, was upset that like when you would search their brand or whatever on ChatGPT, that the source material was coming from like other websites. And she was like, well, how do we become the source material? Then I didn't dive down this rabbit hole, and I won't do it with you, which is like, what is truth? Like it's like, but LLMs have to deal with this now, and humans do too, which is to say, all right, so there's inherent bias of you writing a listicle with AirOps at the top, but then like competitors writing it, there's obviously going to be bias against you and for them, and then you have like affiliate lists, and those are incentivized by like payola. So it's like, what's the most propitious like product that they can sell and like make money from? And then review sites, like there's obvious like bias there. Anybody who knows how G2 and Capterra work knows that it's not like the best product rises to the top. It's like if you have like an army of evangelists and you have, customer marketing teams and often pay to play there too. So it's like, and then you get into Reddit and UGC, and there's also ways to game that. So I don't see any way to perfectly calibrate the objectivity of a recommendation.
Right.
And there's not in the real world either,
No, I mean, we all have our own biases that we're going to bring to it. Your friends have biases when you ask for their recommendations, like your parents have biases when you ask for their advice. So, I mean, yeah, there's not going to be like the perfect ultimate truth for an enterprise, SaaS company to like figure out on that or what's the best option for you. I do think though that there is an element to that authenticity that say like G2 reviews do bring, or like Reddit threads do bring, that people are very interested in, because it's like one step removed maybe from your regular network of like, oh, well, if these people tried it out here, there's some pros and cons, but like, I'll give it a shot. And so I do think even though some of that could be gamed or incentivized for people to leave some like G2 reviews, I think once you have some of the right customers in place who are satisfied, like that carries a lot of weight. Like the case studies, their point of view, like that is still really helpful because there are brands doing things really well that you want to learn from or take notes from. And so having a stamp of approval, like that social proof, I think is really important. So I mean, you can be in 1 million Slack groups, 1 million WhatsApp groups to like poll everybody. But I think I like kind of the reviews and the Reddit conversations.
Yeah. My best mental model here is actually still the surround sound play.
It holds up.
It's like, it's rooted in first principles. Like it was about a search results page, but it actually applies more broadly. And I got the idea because like I would, I would listen to all these podcasts, and like an author would go on 6 to 10 of similar podcasts all at the same time when they were promoting a book. And then you get this idea that they're everywhere. And I think, if there's a constellation, that's kind of how you calibrate on a sense of truth or veracity. It's like you might have some listicles of your own. You might have like mentions on other competitors' listicles, and you're on G2 and you're on Reddit. And then all of a sudden it rises above this certain threshold to say, it'd be kind of hard to fake all of that, And if they did, shit, it might still be worth it. Like that's,
I mean, I used to be a big believer to like focus on one channel, get really good at that, and then move on. And if I was a startup, that was usually the way I focused. But now you really need like 2 or 3, because if I do type in like best LLM visibility tools, AirOps is at the top. I hear something about content engineering, and then I read about a research report. Like all of those things are like working together to like help inform the decision. So it's not necessarily being at the top of the list that's going to drive it. It is going to be like being mentioned to your surround sound point on like several different outlets. At AirOps, we just launched like an offsite play or offsite service for brands to help them with digital PR, with mention outreach, with backlink outreach, because it is all those things like working together along with like maybe the random listicle mention to like help drive these decisions. And I'm not going to get into the conversation with you either about attribution. Attribution is broken. I mean, we all know that there's no perfectly way to attribute every single buying decision, but like I think it all does come together.
Yeah, I already know we're gonna have to do another podcast because there's so many like that. I'm like, all right, I can't do this in the hour that we have. I actually wanted to make sure that I asked the questions because I sourced from my team a bunch of questions.
Oh, okay.
Like I use AirOps, but I'm like I'm a novice, so I barely use the platform. Whereas like we have a full-time content engineer. Like we use the title. And then several others who are working pretty deeply on the platform. So I asked them, like, what do you think I should ask Josh?
Okay.
And there's a wide range of questions. I think a lot of people are curious about how to make this transition into more of a content engineering role.
Yeah.
So Catherine on my team asked, I'd love to know what Josh thinks are the most important skills for content engineers to develop, both for established and aspiring content engineers.
Yeah, so it really is that systems mindset approach compared to saying like one-off approach. It's like, how can I use some repeatable inputs to then get like repeatable outputs? And so taking a step back, mapping out like your end goal that you want to have, and then building workflows and building systems to like meet that. And to be honest, that's something I've learned a lot at AirOps, I would say, from our VP of growth, Owen in particular. He's just like such a systems thinker. He's always like, how do we take this to the next level? Like, how do we experiment with X and Y to like really take this up a notch? And so I think that's a really important element for content engineers, is to have like a systems thinking. That doesn't necessarily mean like you need to know all of JavaScript or Python or whatever to be able to do that. But it is just taking a step back and be like, yeah, how could I make this bigger? How could I even grow this beyond what I thought I was originally working on?
If you have a content marketer, would you recommend they learn any sort of coding, scripting, or would it simply be enough to get into AirOps and also diagram out like what you're hoping to accomplish on a Miro board or something like that? Thus, the systems thinking, kind of like, pulling something beyond the atom and like bringing it out into the full picture. Like, how would you recommend they actually build that systems mindset?
Yeah, that is one of the things that we start with, actually, is pulling out Figma board, Miro, whatever, and then being like, here's my end goal that I'm trying to get to, instead of just like jumping in the tool and like building something. So yeah, we walk through that at the AirOps cohort, which is like a live training thing. And then we also have AirOps University, which is like a self-paced course to help you walk through some of that. But then the other thing I would say is just like, what is one simple automation that you could start with? Or like, what's one simple workflow? And so, yeah, it is like I have a huge webinar program and workflows that our previous content engineer who's still with the company, Ocean, like built for me, where it was like, here's takeaways, here's recap, here's an email that you can send, here's like a social post, all from like one corpus of content. So starting with maybe like one of those elements, I'm like repurposing, updating, refreshing, and then seeing where that takes you and how to grow is usually a good place to start.
That makes sense. And then also from Catherine, she says, wading through the hype machine is tiresome. So if you have any specific recommendations for training, reading, industry news, people to follow, I know you just mentioned the AirOps resources around training, but like anything else you could shout out as like a good high signal resource?
Oh, just in general about like AI or automation? Or...
Yeah. And it doesn't have to apply directly to content engineering. You'd mentioned systems thinking, like any sort of resources or people that you think would be high value for somebody looking to learn.
Yeah, one guy I really like, two folks who are like growth folks, this guy, Greg Eisenberg, who I'm forgetting his newsletter, but he's kind of done a big YouTube channel. Like he's really into like AI experimentation, just like a couple steps outside of like the general marketing world. And then a guest that he has, but is like an awesome Twitter follow, is Cody Schneider, who has run like all of these crazy growth plays, including like creator influencer plays for your brand, like micro influencer stuff, to where you like pay somebody like $10, but the algorithm like shapes it in a certain way to like where your CAC is like so crazy because of like just the algorithm changes and the influences. So like those two guys in particular, I always like watching their stuff.
Interesting. All right, moving on to Nia, our content engineer. What are some of the most creative or unexpected AirOps workflows that you've seen that you haven't already shown on your webinars?
Oh man, that is a good question. I should have pulled some folks on our team for that. What I'm really interested in is, I think this was on a webinar, sorry, but like creating like Reddit response posts for certain topics. And it wasn't like they automatically posted anything they came up with like directly to Reddit, but they like scraped all these different Reddit questions, compared it to their library, and then was like, do we have answers for this? Then can we like create a response for that? And so then they came up with like sample responses. We've had some folks do a lot of like policy research, which has been really interesting, like almost like an old fashioned RSS feed to where they're like scraping certain data sources for like information and then like delivering that into a report. I thought that was really cool. Yeah, I mean, there's like so many customized use cases that it's hard to remember them all.
And more broadly, what do you think the next level of use cases is beyond the typical workflows that companies are building?
Man, I wish you would have sent me these beforehand.
Yeah, these are tough.
The next system beyond what they're currently building.
I think going into your imagination, even like what do you think is like within reach where you're not seeing it commonly applied? Or
yeah. I think there's two huge opportunities. It's just like internal meetings and discussions as like raw materials for content. And I don't necessarily mean like sharing confidential stuff, but like we're all have like meeting note takers now and like transcript stuff to where it's not trying to get anybody in trouble, but it's just like, oh yeah, we like talked about this idea. We really worked through some ideas and some possible solutions, all of which could be viable. And then we arrived at this one. And I think people are very interested in like taking like how-tos and frameworks, like another level is just like, how did this company make a decision to get to this? And how did these thought processes work? And so I think there's a lot of stuff within internal meetings that don't get surfaced to like maybe the normal content or SEO teams that
this
adds a
would
lot of
be
value.
like externally like readable resources, like as a marketing mechanism, not necessarily just using this as like internal knowledge share. This is something you would flip outwards and basically use as an asset.
Well, I think like there is a lot of internal knowledge sharing that could go there too, but like I'm missing out on all of the engineering conversations that our team has. And I'm not saying all of those are relevant, but it's also like, oh yeah, what are some things there? What are some things that they're talking about that, not to share any trade secrets, but like that could help the buyers inform like what we're doing. And then kind of the typical one is like we call it question mining, or maybe that is the term for it, through like your sales transcripts and stuff to like understand objections. That is like one level that people aren't always using, but I then do think taking that to the next step with like internal conversations. I mean, there's a whole host of things there that, not everybody would want to get into, but it's like, oh yeah, like sharing certain meeting notes and then taking that responsibly. I think there is something there as far as the frameworks and decision-making goes.
I think there's a lot of value in that data. So Nia is also asking about sort of education and progression, but let's take this as like the 201 to 301 transition. Yeah. So somebody's already a content engineer. They're already building workflows to, help create content briefs or do internal linking. Like, how do you think somebody at that level kind of moves on to that next level as they're progressing towards those less obvious, more amorphous use cases?
Yeah. So now you can really start to experiment a lot faster with like maybe that random idea that was just like on your back burner that you were just like, oh, I don't have the resources for that. In a lot of ways now with AirOps and LLMs, you do have the resources to pull it off. So it's like, am I building like tools? Am I expanding my glossary? Am I building like all these programmatic things? Should I go after a new industry and just see if there's like validation there, or a new persona to see if there's something there? Because you can create that content like super fast, but then you can also like take it down super fast. Like if you're not seeing those results. So I think there is a lot there that you can take as like a growth mechanism, and give yourself permission to like try it out, or at least get like an MVP up a lot faster than you used to.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I've got a few questions from Kate, who attended the live hackathon y'all did. I think you met Kate.
Yeah.
So she asks, where are teams pausing workflows or sort of, where's the pushback coming in regarding implementing automations and workflows? Her question is, where are teams pausing workflows for the human in the loop?
Because the workflow is broken, or because they want a review step?
I think where is the sort of like hesitation? Where's the where are people getting caught up as opposed to rolling it out fully? Like where's the bottleneck? I don't know if that's the right word.
I think a lot of folks have come in like really skeptical. I'm thinking of a couple companies right now to where they're like, you're just not going to be able to do what our product manager can do or our writers can do on this. And then we asked them for like, well, what is your best work? Like, give us what you think is like hit all of the marks. And then what's really great is we've been starting to exceed that, where people are like, oh, I don't know, that came out of AirOps versus like something we did internally. So I always think in that people usually come in skeptical anyway. So the bar is usually like higher than I would say their normal expectation would be. And so it's been cool to see when some workflows in AirOps can meet that standard.
All right. And then also from Kate, what are the more advanced orgs doing differently to address AI and automation barriers, skills, governance, et cetera? I mean, I would even think organizationally, like not just individually here, that lower maturity orgs aren't doing.
It's giving people the freedom to experiment with a lot of the AI tools. It's really like equipping them and just kind of seeing what happens. So that's like, hey, we need everybody to sign up for Claude. We need everyone to sign up for LLM Notebook, and then actually use it. And then maybe your goal for the week or for the month is like, oh, I tried these 3 to 5 things within these tools, and this is what I learned, and this is what was hard, and here's where I need to grow and change. Because we're in a really interesting point to where we're realizing that the AI tools won't do everything for us, but that we can start to like leverage them maybe beyond what our capabilities were before. So it could be having maybe the same headcount, but like then having better systems that like overproduces or like overcompensates for that. So I would say that the top orgs are really forward thinking around just equipping their people with the right tools around it, and like aren't scared. They just kind of want to see what happens. And so I think that experimentation stage before implementation is always super important.
I love to hear the word experimentation, of course. This follow-up is for me. Are there any like externally legible like signals that a company is going to be, effective versus like a little slower to move? Like, I get the idea that like, hey, we're going to give you some buffer and bandwidth for experimentation. But is it like if somebody is like a early stage company who's very inspired and motivated to move fast as opposed to like perfectly, or is it like somebody comes in with like executive level, top down, like, hey, we're going to do this. Like, is there something where you're like, all right, this company has the right pieces in place, they have the right attitude, where I think they're going to crush it here?
Yeah, I mean, 2 examples come to mind for sure. We have some resources on our website from Carta and Webflow, who really were like, the CMO of Carta, I think she actually read my 10x content engineer piece first, then like passed it down to her team. Then Lucy on that team was like, I'm really interested in this. Can I like go through some of the cohort and training and explore it? And they were like, yes. And so she became one of our like big advocates initially for just like content engineering in general. So that level, and I think they're starting to upskill other folks like in their team because of that. So the executive buy-in is huge to be at least like, I need to make a bet on this. I need to at least put some budget on this to then give my folks some freedom to experiment, to try things out. So I would say that's a big difference.
We didn't even talk about AI search. We're not going to have time for that, are we? Do you want a clippable moment? I can give you I rarely do this, but like, do you want to, I'll just cue one up for you.
Okay.
What's the difference between AI search and SEO?
There's a lot of similarities, but I would say the main difference is that your brand mentions in the output will not necessarily go back to a page, which is like different for everybody to think about. So the answer in LLMs will like synthesize a lot of your information. And so you have to think about it in a different way. And that one page won't necessarily be feeding the keyword search. It could be multiple pages like feeding into that LLM answer.
So one answer is the surface area. It's not one page to one link on one SERP. It's like one query to one answer to 30 sources that all fuel the answer.
Exactly. Yeah.
Very interesting. Anything else we didn't discuss?
I mean, I wanted to talk about magazines real fast, but
yeah, rip magazines. So you had magazines and MoFu. Those were the two remaining things on your list.
Yeah, I'm going to give a quick rant. In defense of magazines as a writer, I still subscribe to a couple print magazines, and they help me, one, focus because I'm like reading the one thing. So it's like different than a book. But two, they're so transportable that you can like fold them and like take them places easier than you can a book. So that's my random rant, is that I wish print magazines would come back because it's like more focus, also easily transportable, but then also easily disposable. Because when you're done, you're just like done, but they're still thin and like so much good stuff in there.
When you say come back, do you mean from a consumption basis? Because I assume they're still being published.
Yeah, they're still around, but I mean from like a more popular realm. Yeah, like physical books have had a bit of a comeback here. Like Barnes and Noble's like expanding. So I want to see the magazine come back because we're like all losing focus and attention. It's like, give me that tangible like focus experience that I can then like dispose of.
I think they're going to come back. And this is my rant. I've been riffing on this for years now. And I think finally the time has come to fruition where this is happening culturally. But friction maxing. Have you heard of friction maxing?
No.
I think it was a New York Magazine article. Basically, the new trend is basically we're going to add friction back into our lives. You know, the past 10 years, it was all about friction reduction. DoorDash makes it easy to just like get food to your door. You don't have to look at a human. You know, dating apps make it easy to swipe left, swipe right. There's no risk of rejection. You're just, all right, let's just like see who likes me and I like them. AI gives you the answer right away. Everything's automated. So now I don't know who's leading this charge. I think possibly younger generations. They're like, no, I want to wait in line. I want to go talk to somebody at a coffee shop and potentially get rejected, you know?
Right.
So they're adding friction back in. And I love this trend because personally last year, I noticed that my brain wasn't, like I was still capable of like writing at times, but I didn't get into flow states as often. And I used to probably get into a nice deep work flow state where I just lose track of time and I just get immersed in the work once a week.
Yeah.
And I noticed this because I was on a train to Boston and I got in this really nice flow state. And I was like, man, that felt good. I got so much work done, but it wasn't even about the work. It was about the satisfaction of that feeling itself. I'm like, this only happens to me once every few months now. I'm like, why is that? Okay, so partially it's probably just due to my own schedule. Founder, you know, you're doing so many different things and in meetings all the time. But then another part of it is because I've lost the plot. Like I'm looking at my phone first thing in the morning. I'm like using AI to like, you know, reduce friction towards any sort of information seeking.
Yeah.
So I always do a word of the year, and the word of the year this year is presence. And the main thing is to just be present in the moment as opposed to like filtering my attention through or fracturing it through a million different things. Right. And part of that, you know, tactically is like instead of reading online articles and LinkedIn, I rarely do social media now. I rarely consume it. I'll read a deep book. You know, and I think magazines would also be a good complement to that when I'm on the train. But I want to, if I am reading something or if I'm in person with somebody, if I'm at a concert, like I just want to be at the concert. Like I want to be reading the magazine. I don't want to be like doing 100 million things all at once. You know, so I think this is coming back into flavor. I think we're seeing that through a shift towards IRL events. Like it's coming in multiple different dimensions and domains, but I think it's coming back.
I love that friction maxing. And maybe to tie it up, I subscribe to New York Magazine. So there we go.
All right.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you. We'll definitely have to do another one, huh?
Yeah, that was fun.
I have a whole list of things we didn't even talk about.